Mother bear, trapped under fallen tree. What this human baby did left. Rescuers speechless. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. In a remote corner of Pinewood Valley, where ancient trees cast long shadows over moss-covered rocks, the Lawson family had built their cabin retreat. Little Lily, just 14 months old with copper curls and curious hazel eyes, played contentedly on a quilt spread across the cabin's wooden porch. Her mother, Ruby, hummed as she hung laundry nearby, pausing occasionally to smile at her daughter's delighted giggles. Beyond the clearing, unseen by human eyes, a majestic brown bear named Stella by the local rangers navigated the forest floor with her 3-month-old cub, Nova. Stella's thick fur glistened in patches of sunlight as she taught her cub to forage among fallen logs. Nova mimicked her mother's movements, her tiny paws swatting at mushrooms and overturning stones to find insects. The spring morning had begun peacefully, but nature's calm would soon shatter. Dark clouds gathered overhead, and the wind began to whistle through the trees. The old maple that had been weakened by last winter's harsh storms groaned under the force of the sudden gust. Stella, sensing danger, nudged Nova toward safety, but before she could follow, a deafening crack split the air. The massive trunk crashed down, pinning Stella's lower body beneath its crushing weight. Nova's frightened wails pierced the forest quiet. Stella struggled desperately, her powerful muscles straining against the immovable weight. Each movement sent waves of pain through her body, yet her eyes remained fixed on her cub, who circled frantically just beyond reach. Back at the cabin, Ruby stiffened at the sound of the falling tree. "Strange," she murmured, tucking a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. "No storms forecast today." She gathered the remaining clothes and glanced at Lily, who had suddenly grown still, her head tilted as if listening to something her mother couldn't hear. The distant sounds of animal distress carried faintly on the breeze. Miles away at the ranger station, Park Ranger Theo Harrison received a call from a hiker reporting the sound of a tree fall and animal cries. "Could be nothing," his colleague Jasmine Powell suggested, adjusting her Forest Service cap. "But we should check it out anyway. That area has the mother bear with the new cub we've been monitoring." As Theo and Jasmine loaded their truck with rescue equipment, Lily crawled to the edge of the porch, drawn by something inexplicable. Ruby turned back just as Lily pulled herself up using the porch railing, her little feet determined to take her toward the forest path. What would unfold in the next few hours would test the boundaries between wild instinct and human compassion. How could anyone imagine that the innocent curiosity of a toddler would become the pivotal element in a desperate rescue? And what mysterious connection could possibly form between a helpless human child and a wounded wild animal fighting for survival? Ruby's husband, Ben Lawson, emerged from the cabin, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He had been fixing a leaky faucet while Ruby tended to the laundry. His weathered face broke into a smile at the sight of Lily standing by the railing, her chubby legs wobbling slightly. "Look at our little explorer," he said, pride evident in his voice. "She's getting more adventurous every day." Ruby nodded, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Did you hear that crash earlier? Something feels off, Ben." Ben wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Probably just a dead tree coming down. Happens all the time in these woods." As they spoke, Lily's attention remained fixed on the forest, her small fingers gripping the railing tightly. A soft whimper, carried by the wind, reached her ears, and she let out a responding babble as if answering a call. Meanwhile, Theo and Jasmine's truck bumped along the narrow Forest Service road. Jasmine checked the GPS coordinates provided by the hiker. "We're about 2 miles from the reported location," she said, her expression serious. "And about a mile from the Lawson cabin, I think." Theo nodded, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. "I've been worried about that old maple near their property. Been meaning to mark it for removal." In the forest, Stella's situation grew dire. The weight of the fallen maple compressed her lungs, making each breath a struggle. Nova had settled into a pitiful whimpering, curled up just out of her mother's reach. The cub occasionally approached, sniffing at her trapped mother, then retreated in confusion when Stella couldn't rise. Blood trickled from a gash in Stella's side where the rough bark had torn her fur. The forest floor beneath her grew damp with it, attracting insects that added to her distress. Still, her eyes never left her cub, and her occasional low moans conveyed both pain and reassurance. Back at the cabin, Ruby decided to prepare an early lunch. "Keep an eye on Lily, will you?" she asked Ben. "She's been acting strangely since we heard that tree fall." Ben settled into a wicker chair on the porch, a newspaper in hand, while Lily played with wooden blocks nearby. But the moment Ben became engrossed in his reading, Lily seized her opportunity. With a determination unusual for a child her age, she crawled to the stairs, descended one by one on her bottom, and then pulled herself up at the bottom, toddling toward the forest path. The path was well worn, created by Ben's daily wood-gathering trips. Lily had never ventured this way alone, but something pulled her forward, the distressed cries of the cub calling to something deep and instinctual within her. At the ranger station, a second call came in. Another hiker reported seeing a mother bear and cub in distress near the fallen maple. The station chief, Eleanor Bennett, immediately radioed Theo and Jasmine. "We've got confirmation on that bear situation." Her voice crackled through the radio. "Possible injury. Proceed with caution and call for backup if needed." Jasmine reached for the radio. "Copy that. ETA about 15 minutes. What none of them realized was that little Lily Lawson would reach the scene long before any of the adults. Her unsteady steps carried her deeper into the forest, following the sounds of distress with uncanny accuracy, while her father remained oblivious on the porch, thinking she was still playing safely beside him. In the dappled shadows beneath the trees, an unlikely encounter was about to unfold, one that would challenge everything these seasoned forest rangers thought they knew about wild animals and human connection. Lily's tiny feet carried her along the path, her steps becoming more confident with each passing moment. Twigs snapped beneath her shoes, and leaves brushed against her overalls as she ventured deeper into the forest. The sounds of Nova's distress grew louder, guiding her forward like a beacon. Back at the cabin, Ruby emerged from the kitchen with a plate of sandwiches. Her heart stopped when she saw Ben dozing in the chair, his newspaper fallen to his lap, and no sign of Lily. "Ben!" she cried, dropping the plate with a crash that jolted him awake. "Lily's gone!" Ben leapt to his feet, eyes wide with panic. "What? She was just here." His gaze darted around the porch, then down to the yard. "Lily!" he shouted, voice echoing through the trees. Ruby spotted something that made her blood run cold. Tiny footprints in the soft dirt, leading toward the forest path. "The trail," she whispered, already running. She went into the forest. Meanwhile, Theo and Jasmine's truck arrived at a clearing where they could drive no further. They gathered their equipment: ropes, a small hydraulic jack, tranquilizer guns, and first aid supplies for both humans and animals. "Smells like rain," Theo observed, glancing at the darkening sky. "Let's move quickly." As they hiked toward the coordinates, Jasmine's radio crackled to life. Eleanor's voice came through, tense and urgent. "Be advised, we just got a call from the Lawson cabin. their toddler has wandered into the forest alone. Approximate location unknown. Additional rangers are being dispatched for search and rescue. Jasmine and Theo exchanged horrified glances. "The same area as our injured bear?" Theo asked, already knowing the answer. "Affirmative," Eleanor confirmed. "Proceed with extreme caution." The two rangers quickened their pace, fear for the child now mingling with their concern for the bears. Unaware of the panic she had caused, Lily continued her journey through the forest. She hummed softly to herself, a tuneless melody that carried on the breeze. As she rounded a bend in the path, she suddenly stopped, her eyes widening at the scene before her. The massive maple lay across the clearing, its enormous trunk creating a barrier. On one side lay Stella, her breathing labored, fur matted with blood and dirt. Nova paced on the other side, occasionally pawing at the trunk, as if trying to dig his mother out. Lily stood perfectly still, her head tilted in curiosity rather than fear. Stella's eyes, filled with pain, locked onto the human child. A low growl rumbled in her throat, a warning to stay away. But Lily, too young to understand danger, only heard the pain in the sound. "Boo-boo," she said softly, the word she used when she herself was hurt. She took a step forward, then another. Nova spotted her first and froze, uncertain about this strange, small creature. The cub retreated slightly, pressing against the fallen trunk near his mother's head. Stella tried to raise herself again, desperate to protect her cub from this human intruder, but could only manage a weak movement before collapsing back in pain. What happened next would later be described by Theo as the most remarkable display of cross-species empathy he had ever witnessed. Lily, seeing the cub's fear, sat down right where she was. Then, with deliberate movements, she pulled a small stuffed rabbit from the pocket of her overalls, her constant companion that she carried everywhere. "Bunny, help," she said simply, and placed the stuffed animal on the ground halfway between herself and Nova. Then she scooted backward slightly, giving the cub space. Nova, curiosity temporarily overcoming fear, inched forward to investigate this strange offering. The cub sniffed at the stuffed rabbit, pawed it gently, then picked it up in his mouth. Stella watched with what could only be described as bewilderment, her warning growls subsiding as she observed the gentle interaction. Her eyes remained fixed on Lily, assessing, calculating, but the immediate sense of threat began to fade as the child showed no signs of aggression. In this moment of extraordinary connection, the sound of crashing underbrush announced the arrival of the rangers. Theo and Jasmine burst into the clearing, then stopped abruptly at the unbelievable tableau before them. A trapped mother bear, her cub holding a child's stuffed animal, and a toddler sitting calmly on the forest floor, watching with innocent curiosity. "Don't move," Jasmine whispered, slowly raising her tranquilizer gun. "I'll sedate the bears, then we grab the child." But Theo put a hand on her arm, lowering the weapon. "Wait," he said softly, his experienced eyes taking in the scene. "Something extraordinary is happening here. Look at the bear's body language. There's no aggression." As they watched in astonishment, Lily clapped her hands gently and smiled at Nova. "Good bear," she said in her simple toddler vocabulary. "Bunny help bear." And somehow, against all logic and expectation, the tension in the clearing continued to dissolve, creating a fragile bubble of unexpected peace amid a potentially deadly situation. Thunder rumbled in the distance as Theo and Jasmine remained frozen at the edge of the clearing. Years of training told them to intervene immediately, to grab the child and retreat to safety, but something unprecedented was unfolding before their eyes. "I've never seen anything like this," Jasmine whispered, her hand still hovering near her tranquilizer gun. The bears should be in full defensive mode. Theo nodded slowly. The mother can't move, so she's not an immediate threat, but that cub should be aggressive toward anything approaching them right now. His eyes narrowed as he studied Lily. Somehow, that child has bypassed their fear response. Nova, still clutching the stuffed rabbit, had settled onto his haunches, eyes darting between his trapped mother and the small human. Occasionally, he would nose the toy, then look at Lily as if expecting her to explain this strange object. Lily, emboldened by the cub's acceptance of her offering, scooted forward slightly. "Bear sad," she said, pointing at Stella, "Trioe." Stella's eyes never left the child, but her growls had subsided completely. Instead, her breathing came in labored pants, her strength clearly fading as the minutes passed. "We need to act now," Theo said decisively. "That mother bear is going into shock, but we have to extract the child without disrupting this bizarre peace." As they deliberated, voices called from further down the trail, Ben and Ruby frantically searching for their daughter. "Lily!" Ruby's voice carried through the trees, edged with desperation. The sound startled Nova, who dropped the stuffed rabbit and retreated to his mother's side. Stella lifted her head slightly, a weak growl rumbling in her chest at this new potential threat. "Call them," Theo instructed Jasmine urgently. "Tell them to approach slowly and quietly. Any sudden movements or loud sounds could shatter whatever spell this kid has cast." Jasmine spoke softly into her radio, explaining the unbelievable situation and instructing the parents on how to approach. Meanwhile, Theo began to edge slowly into the clearing, making himself visible to the bears while maintaining a non-threatening posture. "Hey there, little one," he called softly to Lily. "Your mommy and daddy are looking for you." Lily turned to him, her face brightening. "Bear has Owie," she informed him seriously, pointing at Stella. "Help Bear?" Theo's heart melted at the child's concern, even as his professional mind raced through rescue scenarios. "Yes, we're going to help the bear," he assured her. "But first, I need you to come to me, very slowly." Lily looked uncertain, glancing between Theo and the bears. "Bear sad," she repeated. "I know, sweetheart," Theo said gently. "And we're going to make the bear happy again. But your mommy is sad too because she can't find you." This reasoning reached Lily's young mind. She nodded solemnly, then began to stand up. Nova, alarmed by her movement, made a small distressed sound. Surprisingly, Lily turned back to the cub and spoke to it as she might to another child. "It okay?" she said reassuringly. "Bear, mommy get help." She pointed to her stuffed rabbit, still lying where Nova had dropped it. "Bunny stay." As if understanding, Nova cautiously approached the toy again, nudging it with his nose while keeping one eye on the strange little human. With agonizing slowness, Theo closed the distance to Lily. When he finally reached her, he scooped her up in one fluid motion, quickly retreating to where Jasmine stood guard. Just then, Ben and Ruby burst into the clearing, their faces transforming from terror to relief at the sight of their daughter safe in the ranger's arms. Ruby rushed forward, tears streaming down her face. "Oh my God, Lily!" she cried, taking her daughter from Theo. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" "Bear has Owie," Lily explained earnestly, pointing to Stella. "Bunny help." For the first time, Ruby and Ben registered the full situation: the trapped mother bear, the cub with their daughter's stuffed rabbit, and the two rangers standing guard. "Jesus," Ben breathed, instinctively pulling his family back. How did she not get attacked? Theo shook his head, still processing what he had witnessed. "I don't have a scientific explanation for you. but somehow your daughter established a peaceful connection with these bears that defies everything we know about wildlife behavior." "We need to get them out of here," Jasmine interrupted, glancing at the darkening sky. "More rangers are on the way with equipment to free the mother bear, but it's not safe for civilians, especially not with a child." Ben nodded, already turning to leave, but Ruby hesitated. "Her rabbit," she said. "It's her favorite toy. She can't sleep without it." They all looked back at the clearing, where Nova had curled up beside the fallen trunk, the stuffed rabbit now tucked between his paws as he nuzzled it for comfort. "I'll bring it back later," Theo promised, though uncertainty flickered across his face. "Or we can buy a new one." Lily, however, shook her head firmly. "Bunny help bear," she insisted. "Bear keep." The adults exchanged glances over her head, a moment of understanding passing between them. Sometimes wisdom came from the most unexpected sources. "Bunny can help the bear," Ruby agreed softly, brushing tears from her cheeks. "That's very kind of you, Lily." As Ben and Ruby carried their daughter away from the clearing, the delicate balance in the forest shifted once more. The connection Lily had forged remained, symbolized by the small stuffed rabbit that offered comfort to a frightened cub, while its mother fought for her life beneath the crushing weight of the fallen maple. Behind them, Theo and Jasmine turned their attention back to the rescue operation, both forever changed by what they had witnessed, a moment of pure empathy that transcended species, language, and the natural order of the wild. The sky darkened further as additional rangers arrived at the clearing. The rescue team, led by a veteran wildlife expert named Dr. Calvin Reed, quickly assessed the situation. Female brown bear, approximately 6 years old, Dr. Reed observed, examining Stella from a safe distance. Severe compression injury. That tree must weigh several tons. Nova had retreated to the far side of the fallen trunk, still clutching Lily's stuffed rabbit. The cub watched the growing number of humans with wary eyes, but didn't flee into the forest as expected. "That's the strangest thing," Jasmine explained to Dr. Reed, pointing to the stuffed toy. "A toddler wandered in here and somehow formed a connection with these bears, left her toy with the cub." Dr. Reed raised an eyebrow. "A toddler approached a bear cub with its injured mother present and didn't get mauled." He shook his head in disbelief. "I've been working with wildlife for 30 years, and I've never heard of such a thing." "We all witnessed it," Theo confirmed. "The girl showed no fear, and somehow the bears responded to that innocence. Well, whatever magic that child worked, we need to act fast," Dr. Reed said, turning back to the urgent situation. "The mother is going into shock. Another hour under that weight and we'll lose her." The rescue team unloaded their equipment. Heavy-duty jacks normally used for lifting vehicles, thick ropes, and a portable pulley system. The rangers positioned themselves strategically around the fallen maple, with 2 wildlife veterinarians standing by with the tranquilizer guns. "We should sedate her before attempting the lift," one of the vets suggested. "Once the pressure is released, she might lash out from pain or fear." Dr. Reed considered this, then shook his head. "She's already dangerously weak. A sedative might push her over the edge." He looked at the bear's eyes, which were now half closed, her breathing shallow. "We'll have to risk it. Besides, she hasn't shown aggression so far, despite the presence of humans near her cub." The team positioned the hydraulic jacks at strategic points along the trunk. Ropes were secured around the thickest part of the tree, with the pulleys anchored to several sturdy nearby trees. "On my count," Dr. Reed instructed. 1, 2, 3, lift." The rangers activated the jacks simultaneously, while others pulled on the ropes. The massive trunk groaned but barely moved. "Again," Dr. Reed called. "Put your backs into it." Rain began to fall, first as scattered drops that pattered on the leaves overhead, then increasing to a steady shower that made the ropes slippery and the ground beneath their feet treacherous with mud. Nova whimpered from his position behind a nearby bush, the stuffed rabbit still clutched in his mouth. The cub paced anxiously as the human strained against the weight trapping his mother. After 3 attempts, the tree had lifted barely 6 inches, not enough to free Stella. Dr. Reed wiped rain from his face, frustration evident in his expression. "We need more power," he said grimly. "The rain's not helping, and this equipment wasn't designed for something this heavy." Theo's radio crackled to life. It was Ben Lawson. "Ranger Harrison? We're safe at home with Lily, but I wanted to check. How's the rescue going?" Theo stepped away from the group to respond. "Not well, I'm afraid. The tree's too heavy for our equipment, and the rain is making everything more difficult." There was a pause, then Ben's voice came through again. "I have a logging winch on my truck. Used to work in forestry before we moved here. Would that help?" Theo's eyes widened. "That would be perfect. How quickly can you get it here?" 10 minutes, Ben responded. "I'll drop Ruby and Lily at the neighbors and come straight there." True to his word, Ben arrived minutes later, driving his truck as close to the clearing as possible. The powerful winch mounted on the front was exactly what they needed. As Ben helped the Rangers attach the winch cable to the fallen maple, he glanced at Nova, who watched from the underbrush, still holding Lily's rabbit. "My daughter hasn't stopped talking about the bears," he told Theo quietly. "Keeps saying, 'Bear sad, but bear be happy soon.' It's like she knows something we don't." Theo followed his gaze to the cub. "Your daughter did something remarkable today. I can't explain it, but she connected with these wild animals in a way I've never seen." With the winch secured, Ben returned to his truck. At Dr. Reed's signal, he activated the powerful mechanism. The cable went taut, and finally the massive trunk began to move. "It's working," Jasmine called, as the tree lifted inch by slow inch. Stella made no movement as the pressure on her body gradually decreased. Her eyes remained closed, her breathing so faint it was barely visible. "Is she still alive?" one of the younger Rangers asked anxiously. Dr. Reed knelt in the mud beside the bear's head, careful to maintain a safe distance. "She's alive, but very weak. Once we get this tree off her, we'll need to assess her injuries immediately." With a final mechanical whine, the winch lifted the trunk high enough for the team to pull Stella free. Her body, released from the crushing weight, lay motionless on the forest floor. Nova, seeing his mother freed, darted forward, still carrying the stuffed rabbit. The cub nosed at Stella's face, making soft whimpering sounds when she didn't respond. The veterinarians approached cautiously, carrying medical supplies. One of them gently shooed Nova back, while the other began examining Stella's injuries. "Multiple broken ribs," the vet reported. "Severe contusion on the right hip and possible internal bleeding. Her pulse is weak but steady." The team worked quickly, administering fluids and antibiotics, splinting what they could, and preparing a special stretcher designed for transporting large wildlife. "Will she make it?" Theo asked quietly, standing beside Doctor Reed as the rain continued to fall around them. The older man's face was grave. "The next 24 hours will be critical, but she's a strong bear and she has something to live for." He nodded toward Nova, who had settled at the edge of the clearing, watching the proceedings with the stuffed rabbit still firmly in his grasp. "What about the cub?" Ben asked. "If the mother doesn't survive, we'll cross that bridge if we come to it," Dr. Reed answered. "For now, we're going to do everything possible to keep this family together." As the team carefully lifted Stella onto the stretcher, Nova followed, unwilling to be separated from his mother. In the cub's eyes was a mixture of fear and hope, and perhaps something else, something that had been awakened by a small child's act of pure compassion. The stuffed rabbit, now soggy from rain and mud, remained clutched in Nova's mouth, a talisman of unlikely friendship and a symbol of the bridge that little Lily had built between her world and the wild. At the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center 10 miles from Pinewood Valley, a team of veterinarians worked through the night to save Stella's life. The facility, usually quiet after dark, hummed with urgent activity as specialists in wildlife medicine assessed her injuries and devised a treatment plan. Dr. Amara Patel, the center's lead veterinarian, emerged from the examination room, pulling off her gloves with a sigh. She found Theo, Jasmine, and Dr. Reed waiting anxiously in the hallway. "She's stable, but it was touch and go for a while," Dr. Patel reported. "Multiple fractures to her ribs and pelvis, significant internal bleeding, and a punctured lung. We've done what we can surgically, but bears don't respond well to lengthy procedures. The next 12 hours will tell us if she has the strength to pull through." "And the cub?" Jasmine asked. Dr. Patel's expression softened slightly. "That's the remarkable part. We expected to have to sedate him and place him in a separate enclosure, but he's been unusually calm. Right now, he's in the indoor observation area next to his mother. Hasn't let go of that stuffed rabbit, though. Tried to take it to clean it, and he nearly bit my assistant." Theo smiled faintly. "It's his security blanket now, a gift from a very special little girl." "Speaking of which," Dr. Reed interjected, checking his watch, "I promised the Lawsons we'd update them. It's late, but I know they're waiting for news." Back at the Lawson cabin, Ruby paced the living room floor while Ben sat at the kitchen table, his hands wrapped around a mug of cold coffee. They had picked up Lily from the neighbors an hour earlier, and despite the excitement of the day, she had resisted going to bed, insisting she needed to help Bear. Finally, exhaustion had won out, and she now lay sleeping in her small bed, her toy box noticeably missing the stuffed rabbit that had been her constant companion since infancy. When the phone rang, both parents lunged for it. Ben answered, putting it on speaker so Ruby could hear. "Ranger Harrison. Any news?" Theo's tired voice came through the line. "The mother bear is in critical condition, but stable. The veterinarians have done everything they can. Now, it's a waiting game." Ruby sank onto a kitchen chair. "And the cub?" "Physically fine, but unwilling to be separated from his mother. Still carrying your daughter's rabbit, actually." Ben and Ruby exchanged glances. Lily had cried briefly for her bunny at bedtime, but had eventually settled when Ruby explained that the little bear needed it more right now because his mommy was hurt. How can a wild bear be so accepting of a human child's toy? Ben wondered aloud. There was a pause on the line. Then Theo's voice, thoughtful and measured. "I've been asking myself that same question all evening. The best answer I can give you is that your daughter somehow connected with these animals on a level we don't fully understand." Dr. Reed's voice joined the conversation. "There are indigenous stories about children having special bonds with wildlife, what scientists usually dismiss as folklore. But today, I witnessed something that challenges everything I thought I knew about wild animal behavior." After hanging up, Ben and Ruby checked on Lily one last time before heading to bed themselves. She slept peacefully, one small hand outstretched as if reaching for something in her dreams. "Do you think she understands what happened today?" Ruby whispered. "That she was in danger?" Ben shook his head, watching their daughter's gentle breathing. "I don't think she ever felt afraid. That's what saved her, and maybe what's saving those bears now. At the rehabilitation center, the night shift began their rounds. Through the observation window, they could see Stella's massive form on a reinforced medical platform, tubes and monitors connected to her body. Beside her, curled into a tight ball, Nova slept with the stuffed rabbit tucked under his chin. One of the technicians snapped a photo of the scene. "No one's going to believe this," she murmured to her colleague. "A wild bear cub comforting himself with a child's toy." As the night deepened, a strange calm settled over the center. The veterinarians had done all they could. Now, nature, and perhaps something more mysterious, would determine the outcome. In her dreams, little Lily saw forests and mountains, felt the earth beneath paws that weren't her own, and sensed a connection to something ancient and wise that had no words in human language. She smiled in her sleep, somehow knowing that across the miles, a mother bear fought to live, while her cub slept with a well-loved rabbit that carried the scent of a human child who had shown no fear, only compassion. And somewhere between science and mystery, between wild and tame, between human understanding and animal instinct, a bridge had been built that none of the adults could fully comprehend, but that Lily, in her innocent wisdom, had crossed without hesitation. Morning would bring new challenges, but for now, in the quiet hours of night, 2 mothers, 2 children, and 1 small stuffed rabbit formed a circle of unexpected connection under the same star-filled sky. Dawn broke over Pinewood Valley with streaks of gold and pink painting the sky. At the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, Dr. Patel had just finished her early morning assessment of Stella. "Her vitals are stronger," she reported to the team gathering for the day shift. "She made it through the critical period. I'm cautiously optimistic." What had surprised the medical team most was Nova's behavior. The cub had remained remarkably calm throughout the night, occasionally approaching his mother's still form to sniff at her fur, then returning to his corner with the stuffed rabbit. Wild cubs separated from conscious mothers typically exhibited extreme distress, yet Nova seemed to understand the situation on some level, as if he knew his mother was receiving help. As the morning progressed, word of the unusual rescue spread through the community. Local news outlets picked up the story, focusing on the remarkable intervention of a toddler who had somehow pacified wild bears. Calls flooded into the ranger station and the rehabilitation center, with people offering donations for Stella's care and expressing amazement at Lily's actions. By mid-morning, Ruby and Ben decided it was time to visit the center. Lily had awakened asking immediately about the hurt bear and whether it was all better now. "Would it be possible for us to see the bears?" Ben asked when he called the center. "My daughter is very concerned about them. We won't get close, of course." There was a pause on the line as the staff member consulted with Dr. Patel. "Normally, we don't allow visitors for wildlife rehabilitation cases," came the eventual response. "But Dr. Patel says this is an exceptional situation. You can observe through the viewing window, but please understand that wild bears are unpredictable, regardless of your previous encounter." When they arrived at the center, Theo was waiting for them in the lobby. His face lit up at the sight of Lily, who hid shyly behind her mother's legs. "Hello again, brave girl," he said, kneeling to her level. "Do you remember me?" Lily nodded solemnly. "Help Bear," she said, pointing at him. Theo smiled. "That's right, and guess what? The bear mommy is starting to feel better thanks to you." Lily's face brightened. "Bear happy now?" "Getting happier," Theo assured her. "Would you like to see her?" The family followed him down a corridor to an observation area with a large window looking into an indoor enclosure. Inside, Stella lay on a padded platform, an IV drip connected to her leg, and various monitoring devices attached to her massive body. In a corner of the enclosure, Nova sat watching his mother, The stuffed rabbit, now clean and somewhat flattened from constant carrying, still clutched in his mouth. Lily pressed her small hands against the glass, her eyes wide. "Bear Mommy sleeping," she observed quietly. "She's getting better," Dr. Patel explained, joining them at the window. "She's a very strong bear." As they watched, something remarkable happened. Nova, who had been keeping a cautious distance from the humans who entered the enclosure to check on his mother, suddenly noticed Lily at the window. The cub's head tilted, nose twitching as if trying to catch her scent through the glass. Still carrying the rabbit, Nova approached the window slowly. The humans in the observation area held their breath as the cub came closer, eventually pressing a paw against the glass directly opposite Lily's small hand. "Oh my God," Ruby whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "He recognizes her." Dr. Patel shook her head in amazement. "That shouldn't be possible. Wild bears don't form attachments to humans this way." But the evidence was undeniable. Nova stood on his hind legs, face level with Lily's, the stuffed rabbit still dangling from his mouth. For a long moment, child and cub gazed at each other, separated by glass but connected by something deeper than the adults could comprehend. "Bunny, help Bear," Lily whispered, pressing her forehead against the glass. As if understanding her words, Nova dropped the stuffed rabbit and nudged it toward the window with his nose, then looked up at Lily expectantly. The gesture was so deliberate, so seemingly conscious, that everyone in the observation area gasped. "Is he trying to give it back to her?" Ruby asked, her voice barely audible. Dr. Patel shook her head slowly. "I've been working with wildlife for 15 years, and I've never seen behavior like this. It's almost as if..." Before she could finish her thought, a low rumble came from across the enclosure. Stella had lifted her massive head, eyes now open and alert, focused directly on the observation window. Despite her injuries, the mother bear attempted to rise. "She shouldn't be able to move yet," Dr. Patel said, already rushing toward the door that led into the enclosure. Her sedation should have kept her down for at least another hour. The monitoring equipment began to beep rapidly as Stella's heart rate increased. The bear managed to pull herself into a sitting position, swaying slightly from weakness and the effects of medication. "Bear, Mommy, wake up!" Lily exclaimed, clapping her hands against the glass. Nova, hearing his mother's movement, immediately abandoned the window and raced to Stella's side, leaving the stuffed rabbit on the floor. The cub made soft chattering sounds, circling around the platform where Stella was struggling to maintain her balance. 2 veterinary technicians rushed into the enclosure, tranquilizer guns ready, but Dr. Patel held up her hand, stopping them. "Wait," she commanded, her eyes fixed on the mother bear. "She's not showing aggression." Indeed, Stella was not growling or displaying typical defensive behavior. Instead, her gaze remained locked on Lily through the observation window, her expression almost contemplative. "This is unprecedented," Theo murmured, watching the scene unfold. "Wild bears don't behave this way, especially not injured ones with cubs." Ben placed a protective arm around Lily's shoulders. "Should we leave? Is our presence agitating her?" Dr. Patel studied Stella's body language carefully before responding. "Actually, I think the opposite might be true. Your daughter's presence seems to be having a calming effect." As they watched, Stella slowly settled back onto the platform, clearly exhausted by even this small exertion. But her eyes remained open, fixed on Lily with an intensity that sent shivers down Ruby's spine. "It's like she recognizes her," Ruby whispered. "But that can't be possible, can it? Lily only saw her for a few minutes in the forest." Dr. Reed, who had joined them silently a few moments earlier, spoke up. There's a phenomenon known as imprinting that occurs in some animals, but it typically happens with newborns and the first creature they see. This is something different. Nova had retrieved the stuffed rabbit and returned to his mother's side, placing it carefully next to her massive paw. To everyone's astonishment, Stella gently touched the toy with her nose, then looked back at Lily. The moment was broken by a commotion in the hallway. A man in an expensive suit pushed past a protesting receptionist, followed by a camera crew and a woman clutching a microphone. "There she is," the man exclaimed, pointing at Lily, "the miracle child who tamed wild bears." Theo stepped forward, blocking their path. "This is a restricted area. How did you get in here?" The man thrust out his hand, which Theo pointedly ignored. "Jackson Reeves, executive producer at Wildlife Wonders Network. We want exclusive rights to this remarkable story. The little girl who speaks to bears. It's television gold." Ruby pulled Lily protectively against her leg, turning away from the cameras. "We're not interested," she said firmly. Reeves was undeterred. "We're prepared to offer substantial compensation. Your daughter could be famous. We're talking series potential, merchandise, maybe even animation rights." Ben's face darkened. "My daughter is 2 years old. She's not a circus act. Please leave us alone." "But the public deserves to hear this story," the reporter interjected, pushing her microphone forward. "How did your daughter know the bears wouldn't hurt her? Does she have special abilities? Has she communicated with animals before?" The commotion was disturbing Nova, who began to pace anxiously. Stella raised her head again, a low warning growl rumbling in her chest. "That's enough, Doctor," Patel said sharply. "You're disturbing the animals and my patients. Security will escort you out." As security guards appeared to remove the television crew, Reeves called over his shoulder. "This story will break with or without your cooperation. The Bear Whisperer child is going viral as we speak." The unsettling encounter left the Lawsons shaken. What had been a private, miraculous experience was now threatening to become a media circus. "I'm so sorry about that, Doctor." Reed apologized. "Someone at the center must have tipped them off. We should get you home before more reporters show up." As they prepared to leave, Lily pressed her hand against the glass one more time. "Bye-bye, Bear," she said softly. "Feel better." Nova approached the window again, the stuffed rabbit once more in his mouth. He placed one paw against the glass directly opposite Lily's hand, then retreated to his mother's side. Theo escorted the family through a back exit to avoid the news van now parked at the main entrance. "We'll keep you updated on Stella's progress," he promised, "and we'll do everything we can to keep the media away from your family." What none of them realized was that a volunteer had captured the moment of connection between Lily and Nova on her smartphone. By the time the Lawsons reached their cabin, the image had already been shared thousands of times across social media, with the hashtag #BearWhisperer child trending worldwide. Their private miracle was now public property, and the peaceful life they had built in Pinewood Valley was about to change forever. By the following morning, the Lawson family's secluded cabin was no longer a sanctuary. 3 news vans had parked at the end of their driveway. A handful of reporters stood at the property line, cameras ready, while curious locals drove by slowly, hoping to catch a glimpse of the Bear Whisperer child. Inside, Ben paced the living room, phone to his ear, while Ruby kept the curtains drawn and tried to distract Lily with breakfast. "No comment means exactly that," Ben said firmly into the phone. "My daughter is not available for interviews, photographs, or whatever exclusive access means. Please respect our privacy." He ended the call with a frustrated sigh. "That was the 3rd network this morning," he told Ruby. "How did they even get our number?" Ruby shook her head, setting a plate of pancakes shaped like bears in front of Lily. Small town, everyone knows everyone. I already had 5 messages from friends asking if it's really true that Lily can talk to animals. Bear pancake, Lily exclaimed happily, unaware of her parents' distress. Ben smiled despite his worry. At least someone's enjoying breakfast. His expression grew serious again as he joined Ruby by the kitchen window, careful to stay out of sight of the reporters outside. "What are we going to do? I don't want Lily turned into some sideshow attraction." Before Ruby could respond, Ben's phone rang again. Ranger Harrison's number. "Theo," Ben answered. "Please tell me you have good news." Theo's voice was tight with concern. "I wish I did. The center's been inundated with calls and visitors trying to see the bears. Dr. Patel had to implement emergency protocols to keep Stella and Nova isolated from the disturbance. And I'm afraid it's about to get worse." "How could it possibly get worse?" Ben asked. "There's a video," Theo replied grimly. "Someone at the center recorded Lily's interaction with Nova yesterday and posted it online. It's gone viral. Over 2 million views as of this morning." Ruby, who could hear the conversation, sank into a chair. "Oh, God," she whispered. "That's not all," Theo continued. "Dr. Reed just called an emergency meeting. There's been a development with Stella that, well, it's difficult to explain over the phone. Is there any way you could come to the center? We can arrange for a private entrance to avoid the media." Ben looked at Ruby, who nodded reluctantly. "We'll be there in an hour," he told Theo, "but we'll need help getting past the reporters outside our house." 40 minutes later, a ranger vehicle pulled up to the cabin. Jasmine Chen stepped out, accompanied by 2 county sheriff's deputies. "We're here to escort the Lawson family to the Wildlife Center," Jasmine announced to the gathered reporters. "Please clear the driveway immediately." While the deputies kept the media at bay, Jasmine quickly ushered Ben, Ruby, and Lily into the ranger vehicle. They exited through a back trail that wound through the forest, avoiding the main road where more reporters waited. "Is Lily always this calm during chaos?" Jasmine asked, glancing at the toddler, who was contentedly looking out the window, pointing at birds and squirrels. Ruby smiled tiredly. "She's always been unusually serene. Even as a newborn, she rarely cried." She brushed a curl from her daughter's forehead. "Sometimes I wonder if she understands more than we realize." At the rehabilitation center, they were met by Theo and Dr. Reed, who led them through a service entrance to avoid the crowd that had gathered at the main doors. "Thank you for coming, Doctor," Reed said, his normally composed demeanor showing signs of stress. "What I'm about to show you defies conventional wildlife behavior patterns. Frankly, if I hadn't seen it myself, I wouldn't believe it." He led them to a different observation area than the one they had visited before. This window looked into a larger enclosure, designed to mimic a natural forest environment with trees, rocks, and a small pool. Stella was there, moving slowly but deliberately among the trees. Her injuries had been bandaged, and while she still favored her right side, she was remarkably mobile for a bear that had been crushed under a massive tree just 2 days earlier. "Her recovery rate is unprecedented," Dr. Reed explained. "Dr. Patel says her tissue regeneration is happening at nearly twice the normal speed. There's no medical explanation for it." But it wasn't Stella's miraculous recovery that had prompted the urgent summons. It was what surrounded her. Throughout the enclosure, placed at seemingly deliberate intervals, were small collections of objects. A pile of stones arranged in a circle, a cluster of branches forming a distinctive pattern, flowers and leaves laid out in what appeared to be specific designs. And at the center of the enclosure, directly visible from the observation window, was a larger arrangement: stones, branches, and pine cones, forming what looked unmistakably like a crude outline of a stuffed rabbit. Nova sat in the middle of this arrangement, the actual stuffed rabbit still clutched protectively in his mouth. "Bunny picture," Lily exclaimed, pointing at the creation. The adults stood in stunned silence, trying to process what they were seeing. "Bears don't create representational art," Dr. Reed said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "They don't arrange objects to form patterns or symbols. This is behavior typically seen only in higher primates, and even then, rarely outside of laboratory settings with intensive training." "Are you saying Stella made these arrangements?" Ben asked incredulously. Dr. Reed nodded slowly. "We have it on video. She's been moving objects around the enclosure since dawn, placing them with what appears to be deliberate intention. Nova helps, bringing her smaller items. It's as if they're trying to communicate something." Ruby's grip on Lily's shoulders tightened. "Communicate with whom?" Dr. Reed's gaze shifted to Lily. "That's what we're trying to determine." As they watched, Stella approached the observation window. Despite her injuries, she reared up on her hind legs, placing one massive paw against the glass. Her eyes, intelligent and eerily focused, fixed directly on Lily. "Bear, say hello," Lily said matter-of-factly, waving at the enormous creature that could easily kill an adult human with a single swipe. "This is beyond my expertise," Dr. Reed admitted. "I've called in Dr. Eleanor Winters from the Institute for Interspecies Communication. She's flying in tomorrow." "What does this mean for Stella and Nova?" Ruby asked. "And for Lily?" Before Dr. Reed could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red emergency lights flashed in the hallway. "Security breach," Theo explained, already moving toward the door. "Stay here, I'll check it out." He returned moments later, his expression grim. A group of reporters and camera operators forced their way past the front desk. "Security is removing them, but they're demanding to see the miracle bears and the bear whisperer child." Ben's patience finally snapped. "That's it. We're leaving. I won't have my daughter treated like some sideshow attraction." "I understand your frustration, Doctor," Reed said, "but there's something extraordinary happening here. Your daughter has somehow formed a connection with these bears that defies scientific explanation. Dr. Winters might be able to help us understand." "She's 2 years old," Ruby interrupted, her protective instincts flaring. "She's not a research subject or a media sensation. She's our child." Lily, oblivious to the adult's tensions, pressed her hand against the glass. "Bear sad," she said suddenly, her small face serious. Everyone turned to look at Stella, who had backed away from the window. The bear was making a low, moaning sound, her head swaying from side to side in apparent distress. "What's happening to her?" Ben asked, alarmed. Dr. Patel rushed into the observation area. "Her vitals are spiking. Heart rate elevated, blood pressure rising. Something's triggering a stress response." As they watched in confusion, Nova began gathering the items from the arranged patterns, destroying the careful constructions. The cub worked frantically, as if trying to erase evidence of something that should remain hidden. "I don't understand, Doctor," Reed murmured. "What changed?" "Danger coming," Lily said clearly, turning away from the window to look up at the adults with solemn eyes. "Bad people want bears." A chill ran through the room at the child's words. Before anyone could respond, Theo's radio crackled with an urgent message from the ranger station. "Be advised, we've received intelligence about a potential threat to the rehabilitating bears," the dispatcher reported. Suspected wildlife traffickers have been monitoring social media about the miracle bears. Local police are increasing patrols around the center, but all personnel should be on high alert. The adults exchanged horrified glances as the implications became clear. The media attention hadn't just invaded the Lawsons' privacy. It had potentially placed Stella and Nova in danger from those who would seek to exploit or harm them. How could Lily possibly know about this? Dr. Patel whispered, staring at the toddler with a mixture of awe and unease. Dr. Reed had no answer, but as he looked between the distressed bears and the unnaturally calm child, one thing became increasingly certain. The connection between Lily and these wild animals went far deeper than anyone had imagined, crossing boundaries of species, language, and perhaps even natural laws themselves. And now, that mysterious bond might be the only thing that could save Stella and Nova from the new threat emerging from humanity's darkest impulses. That night, back at their cabin, under the protection of 2 sheriff's deputies posted outside, the Lawson family tried to process the day's disturbing developments. Lily had gone to bed without her usual resistance, though she had asked repeatedly about her bears, before finally drifting off to sleep. In the kitchen, Ben and Ruby sat at the table, cups of cold tea before them. Voices kept low to avoid waking their daughter. "Wildlife traffickers," Ben said, running a hand through his hair. "How did this get so out of control so quickly?" Ruby stared into her cup. "It's the video. Over 5 million views now, according to the last news report. People calling it a miracle, a sign, proof of some special connection between humans and animals." She looked up at her husband, eyes troubled. "And then there's what Lily said about bad people coming. How could she possibly know that?" Ben had no answer. Their ordinary life had transformed into something unrecognizable in the span of 3 days. Their private, gentle daughter was now the subject of worldwide fascination, and a mother bear and her cub had somehow formed a bond with her that defied scientific explanation. "Maybe we should leave," he suggested. "Take Lily somewhere far from all this attention until it dies down." Ruby nodded slowly. "I've been thinking the same thing. My sister in Oregon has that big house in the mountains. No neighbors for miles." They fell silent, the decision hanging between them. It felt like running away, and yet staying meant continuing to expose Lily to the media frenzy and possible danger. A sudden crash from Lily's room shattered the quiet. Both parents bolted from their chairs, racing down the hallway. They found their daughter sitting upright in bed, her eyes wide open but strangely unfocused. "Lily? Honey, are you okay?" Ruby asked, rushing to her side. Lily didn't respond to her mother's voice. Instead, she spoke in an oddly rhythmic cadence, her voice somehow deeper than her usual toddler tones. "Bears not safe. Forest whispers warning. Bad men with guns and trucks. Coming when moon hides." Ben and Ruby exchanged alarmed glances. "Lily?" Ben tried, gently shaking his daughter's shoulder. "Wake up, sweetheart." Lily blinked several times and her eyes cleared. "Daddy?" she said, her voice normal again. "Bears crying." "You were having a dream, honey," Ruby soothed, though goosebumps had risen on her arms. "The bears are safe at the animal doctor's place, remember?" Lily shook her head stubbornly. "Number bears crying now. Need help?" Before either parent could respond, their phone rang. Ben answered to find Theo's urgent voice on the line. "Sorry to call so late, but we have a situation at the center. The security alarms were triggered, and when the night staff checked the enclosure, they found Stella extremely agitated. She's been pacing and vocalizing for the past 20 minutes. Nova is hiding in the artificial den, still clutching the rabbit. Dr. Patel is concerned they might hurt themselves." Ben's eyes met Ruby's. "What do you need from us?" he asked, already knowing the answer. It feels like a long shot, Theo admitted, but Dr. Reed thinks Lily's presence might calm them. I know it's late, and I completely understand if you refuse, but we'll come, Ben interrupted, making the decision instantly. Lily just woke up saying the bears were crying and needed help. I don't understand what's happening here, but I can't ignore it. 30 minutes later, a ranger vehicle with darkened windows pulled up to the back entrance of the Wildlife Center. The Lawsons were ushered inside, where they found Dr. Reed, Dr. Patel, and a team of worried staff monitoring the bear's enclosure. Through the observation window, they could see Stella pacing in agitated circles, occasionally stopping to rear up and sniff the air. Her bandages had come partially loose from her movement, and spots of blood appeared where her wounds had reopened. She's been like this for nearly an hour, Dr. Patel explained. Her behavior indicates she's sensing a threat, but we've checked the entire perimeter. Nothing unusual was found. Lily, bundled in pajamas and a light jacket, pressed her face to the glass. "Bears no," she said simply. "Bad men in forest." Dr. Reed knelt beside her. "What bad men, Lily? Can you tell us more?" The little girl turned to him, her expression grave beyond her years. "Men who take animals away, put them in small cages, sell them for money." The adults fell silent, disturbed by both the content and the articulate delivery of this statement from a 2-year-old. "That sounds like wildlife traffickers," Theo said finally. "But our patrols haven't reported any suspicious activity." "The moon hides," Lily said, looking up at the observation room skylight, where clouds had indeed covered the crescent moon. "They come now." Dr. Reed didn't hesitate. "Call it in," he told Theo. "Request immediate backup from both rangers and local police. Full perimeter search of the center grounds and surrounding forest." As Theo made the calls, Lily continued watching Stella through the glass. "She's afraid," the child whispered. "Not for her, for her baby." Dr. Patel approached the glass, studying Stella's behavior with new understanding. She's not displaying typical self-protective behavior, she realized. She's exhibiting defensive maternal patterns, trying to locate a threat to her cub. Ruby placed a protective hand on Lily's shoulder. How could she possibly know about traffickers? "The center is secure, isn't it?" "Yes, but these bears lived in those woods their entire lives," Dr. Reed explained. "Wild animals develop acute awareness of their territories. Stella might be sensing unfamiliar human presence in her home range, even from this distance. Or maybe something else is happening here that we don't understand," Ben suggested quietly. Before anyone could respond, Theo rushed back into the observation room. Multiple suspicious vehicles reported on the service road that runs behind the center property. Local police are en route, but they're at least 15 minutes out. 15 minutes might be too late, Dr. Reed said grimly. As if confirming his fears, the lights in the center suddenly went out, plunging the building into darkness. Emergency generators kicked in seconds later, but the momentary blackout sent a wave of panic through the staff. "They've cut the main power," Theo realized, drawing his service weapon. "This is a coordinated attack." Security alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Dr. Patel grabbed a nearby radio. "Security to the rehabilitation wing immediately. Possible intruder situation." In the dimmer emergency lighting, they could see Stella had positioned herself directly in front of the artificial den where Nova had hidden with the stuffed rabbit. The mother bear's posture was unmistakable. She was prepared to defend her cub to the death. "We need to move these bears," Dr. Reed decided. "The transport truck is fueled and ready in the loading bay. We can relocate them to the mountain facility." "There's no time," Theo countered. If these are organized traffickers, they've likely already secured the perimeter. Moving the bears now would expose them directly to the threat. As the adults debated their limited options, Lily tugged insistently on Dr. Reed's sleeve. When he looked down, she pointed to a maintenance door adjacent to the observation window. "Let me see bears," she said with surprising authority. Ruby immediately pulled her back. "Absolutely not." "It's too dangerous, sweetheart. The only thing more dangerous than a cornered wild animal is a mother protecting her young," Dr. Patel agreed. "Even with their connection to Lily, we can't risk putting her in the enclosure." Dr. Reed was about to concur when a thunderous crash echoed from somewhere in the building, followed by shouts and the sound of running footsteps. "They're inside," Theo said, moving toward the door. "I need to help security, get somewhere safe, and lock the doors." As Theo disappeared into the hallway, Dr. Reed made a rapid decision. "The safe room. We use it for dangerous procedures. Steel doors, no windows, security lockdown capabilities." He led them quickly through a series of hallways, moving away from the sounds of disturbance. Behind them, they could hear Stella's agitated roars, growing louder and more frantic. When they reached the safe room, Dr. Reed ushered them inside, but Lily suddenly pulled away from her mother's grasp and darted back down the hallway. "Lily!" Ruby screamed, immediately giving chase. Ben followed, with Dr. Reed and Dr. Patel close behind. They rounded a corner to see the tiny figure of Lily slipping through the maintenance door that led directly into the bear's enclosure. "No!" Ben shouted, lunging forward, but it was too late. The door swung shut behind her. Through the observation window, they watched in horror as Lily entered the enclosure where an increasingly agitated Stella was preparing to defend her cub against unknown intruders. The massive bear turned at the sound of the door, rising to her full height, prepared to charge at this new presence in her territory, her eyes fixed on the small human child, and she opened her mouth in what should have been a threatening roar. But instead of attacking, Stella froze. Nova peered out from the den, still clutching the stuffed rabbit, and made a soft chattering sound at the sight of Lily. As the adults watched in disbelief, Lily walked calmly toward the bears, stopping a few feet away. She held out her small hand, palm up, in a gesture of peace. "It's okay," they heard her say through the observation window's audio system. "Lily, help bears. Bears, help Lily." And to the astonishment of everyone watching, Stella lowered herself to all fours, approached the tiny human, and gently, incredibly gently, touched her massive muzzle to Lily's outstretched hand. In that moment of profound connection, a plan began to form, one that would require trust across species and the courage of a small child who somehow spoke the language of bears.